Yo, what is going on, you guys? So today I'm bringing you guys a brand new sports cards video. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down my thoughts on whether I believe this era of the sports card market is going to be looked back at as another junk wax era and another era of worthless cards. As you guys know, we had a junk wax era in the past where throughout the 1990s, you saw overprinting at an insane level. If you look at Shaq's rookie year, for example, a lot of his most important cards are found at extremely reasonable prices due to the sheer number of cards that were pulled and graded at that time. So I'm going to be breaking down some numbers and some data that should help us figure out where we could be headed in the long term with this era of the sports card market. So without further ado, let's hop right into the video. All right, guys, so if we look briefly at what is happening in the sports card market in the last couple of years, we are obviously seeing that grading has become increasingly easier, which, of course, if you look back at the last junk wax era, there was not really grading. So a lot of cards were just raw, and that was one of the main reasons why prices, I feel like, crashed to the prices that they did, was because there was no grading standard. But the biggest thing that's scaring me more recently is the amount of them that are grading PSA 10s comparatively to other grades. So we used to have the PSA 10 being the golden standard, and what separates an ordinary raw Prizm from a PSA 10. But right now, what we're seeing is, for example, like Victor Wembanyama, an all-time talent, an all-time rookie, his PSA 10 has popped to over 24,000 in a PSA 10, and that's more than all other grades combined by a lot. There's probably another 14,000 out there, maybe 15,000 out there, but that are graded other grades, but you got over 24,000 PSA 10s. So a PSA 10 being special is no longer really the case. It's more so become the standard. And so you see this card right here, this card came out at $1,000 in a PSA 10, $1,000 plus in a PSA 10, and it's down to around $70 to $80. I think what's kind of happening is just too many are flooding the market, too much supply, and the sports card market right now cannot handle a card with this much supply. There's simply not enough buyers as we currently stand. I think two things are going to happen for a card like this, which is one, you're going to have a massive influx in buyers. If the sports card market continues to grow, you got social media nowadays, you got fanatics coming in and doing a lot of work on that side. I think either that's going to happen, similar to what we saw in 2022 or 2020, when we saw like Luka's Prizms go off to $2,000 in a PSA 10, and that was a pop 10,000 at the time. So I think it's either going to go that way, or prices are going to really continue to decline for a lot of these pop 20,000 plus cards. And how I think it's going to impact the other generations is I think a lot of them are going to be going after, like if you look at the 90s, if you look at, for example, Kobe's Precious Metal Gems, this was one of the cards that outstood the test of time. It was a card that, all of a sudden, when everyone was going after the tops, when everyone was going after these other cards that were very overprinted at the time, his Precious Metal Gems was the one card over time that absolutely took off in price. This card was expensive back then, but not too expensive at all. Nowadays, it is one of the most important cards from that generation. So if we look at kind of like what happened in Kobe's Precious Metal Gems market during a time where his other cards, if you look at, for example, like Kobe's Topps 1996, like his Topps rookie card, even in a PSA 10, just continues to bleed in price. They have not really gone up. This card was a $10,000 card in 2021. And right now I'm willing to bet it's under 1,000. Yep, so it's around $750. This card has continued to go down over time, whereas Kobe's Precious Metal Gems have continued to go up over time. I think there are going to be some sets from this generation that withstand time, and I think there's going to be a lot of base common cards that continue to go down over time. So if we look at those sets, what I think they could be, of course, you've got, for example, Wembanyama, his kabooms have been continuing to go up in price, even though his prisms have continued to go down in price. So if you look at, for example, I believe his PSA 8 has continued to go up. A couple of his other important cards have continued to go up, even when his overall market has, quote unquote, gone down. You can see his market's down over the last 90 days, but his important cards are up. I think the market is going to be focusing on short prints, important sets, more so art pieces. Like if you look at a precious metal gem, it is an art piece, literally. It is an insert. It is a very coveted insert. It is very rare. If you look at Wemby's overall, kabooms, they're not, you don't see them sell very often. Unlike a base prism, you're seeing some sales here and there, but a total of maybe 20 to 25 sales in its history in the last, 6 to 8 months, whatever it is, right? And you look at his base prisms that sell, 30, 40 times on eBay every single day. I think there's going to be certain cards that really withstand the test of time throughout this overprinting period. And there's going to be a lot of investors that get burned holding on to, cards that simply put are just not rare and not desirable anymore. So if we look at his Color Blast, for example, this is another card that I really love. I think $15,000 for one of his more important cards that is very rare. It's a pop 1 in a PSA 10. It's a pop 1 in a PSA 9. It's a pop 1 in a BGS 10 and nothing else. No other grades. This is a card that I think could withstand the test of time and be one of those cards that see massive upside in the long term. If Wembanyama turns out to be an all-time great, could I see this card being an $80,000 card? I could. Could I see his base Prizm card going up to $500? I don't, just based off how much there are. And if there are enough people in the hobby for his base Prizm to go up to $500, chances are the hobby's in a good enough place to where his Color Blast would be a six-figure card. If I'm being honest, that's how I feel about it. I'm like, there's always going to be more upside in his short prints. I think Prizm, personally, in my opinion, has lost a lot of credibility in terms of how many parallels they're releasing every single year. If you look at 2012 Prizm, it's Prizm Golds, Prizm Greens, Prizm Silvers, base Prizms. That's it. If you look at nowadays, all different colors. You got the ices, you got the pulsars, you got the seismics, you've got the Prizm Monopolies. If you look at Select, you have a million different cards and a million different parallels. Even optics become that way, Donruss. If you just kind of compare that to where we were, it's very frightening how many of them that there are. And these quote unquote rare parallels, they're still seeing some, a lot of printing out there. Even for like a green Prizm, you're seeing over 1,500 PSA 10s, and almost all of the cards being graded for the green Prizm and for a lot of other Prizms are grading PSA 10s. So that scares me a lot. I would definitely stay away from sets that are getting oversaturated. And I think Prizm is one of those sets that's just been getting oversaturated, and I no longer feel confident buying a Prizm card like I used to. Back for I'll happily buy a 2012 Prizm card. I'll happily buy, a 2013 Prizm card. I'm very reluctant, and in very rare cases will I buy a Prizm card from 2023 or honestly 2020 onwards. If you look at these cards, yes, they've seen appreciation. In the long term, if a Prizm base isn't holding up, sure, a Prizm Orange might. It's a pop 26. This is one of the better Prizm cards. But if this card's holding up, can you imagine how good the Kabooms would be doing, or how good the Color Blast would be doing, the actual rare coveted cards? So I just think we're going to see a lot of cards fall short of expectations, and a few select sets absolutely take off in the long term. And if we look at how expensive these cards could get, if you look at like a Michael Jordan Precious Metal Gems, or other very rare inserts from his time, you can see, this right here is his out of 90, I believe. Yeah, his out of 90 red PMG. This card right here, is still holding up at a $300,000 card. Keep in mind, this is not a rookie card. This is an 11th year Michael Jordan card. An 11th year Michael Jordan card has been selling in the six figures consistently when this card was just like an ordinary insert at its time. You see the appreciation in these cards. A 9.5 sold for $22,000. In 2017, and this card right here, it's selling in lower grades for six figures. You can only imagine a Pop 2 BGS 9.5 if it were to sell again in today's age. So we're seeing massive appreciation in certain cards and a mass depreciation in other cards. And I just think we're going to see the same thing happen. My hypothesis is it could be Kaboom. It could be, the green Kabooms. We're seeing some massive sales. Like I believe Jaden Daniels, his green Kaboom recently just sold for around $85,000. We're seeing people pay up, and I think a lot of people are seeing the opportunity. If he does end up being one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and you've got that one green Kaboom, Kaboom does turn out to be similar to like a precious metal gems. What I'm a little bit concerned about is if they continue to overprint Kabooms, which I think they're kind of headed that direction. The only thing is the early year Kabooms, I think, those are some of the most solid investments I believe you can make. Like if you look at like a Curry, 2014, 2013, I believe it started, yeah. So they started around this time. You got 2013 Kabooms. These are cards that I think like in the long term are going to be very important cards, even if they're not rookie cards. So this is a card with the super low pop. If you look at current, Stroud Kabooms, for example, you're going to see some higher pops, but at the same token, nothing compared to what's going on in the Prizm space. Like you're seeing 10 PSA or 6 PSA 10s, 9 PSA 9s. Like that's very doable for the market to still see great increases. And there are a good amount of long-term holders, so you're not going to see this card sell too much. We saw this card sell 5 times in 2024, which is not bad at all in today's current market. So I think the market's definitely headed that way. I think of the mass amount of cards, the Prizm bases, those are probably going to enter a junk wax era where they're going to be worthless. If I'm being honest, if you just want my personal opinion, I think, if you just look at what happened with Shaq's cards. So we see Wembanyama as a pop 24,000, right? Wembanyama, if he has a career like Shaq or better, amazing. Maybe he has a better career. Who knows? This is a pop 5,000. Pop is like 20% of Wembanyama, and it's around the same price. So, that just goes to show you can be an all-time great. But this pop 9 or PSA 9, this is a pop 20,000. So this would honestly be more comparable to Wembanyama's Prizm PSA 10. I know it's not the best grade, but pop wise, this is probably, a lot more of them were grading PSA 9s. And this card's a $20 to $25 card. So nothing significant. He's an all-time great. And if you look at Shaquille O'Neal's more important cards, more rare cards, you see greater increases in price. So I would just urge you guys, I'm not trying to make a video to get you guys scared about Prizm or about the sports card market, but I simply want people to be more aware of what they're buying and the long-term impacts they could have, based off what I see happening in the future. Of course, everyone has their own opinion, so let us know in the comment section below what you think about the current sports card market and overprinting. But other than that, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'm out. Peace.